Well, winter's ending, spring is upon us, and that means it's not snowing anymore. It's raining. Hey, have you ever wondered how rain forms? Oh, yeah, me neither. It's probably not very interesting. Whoa! I just looked it up. Turns out that how rain forms really is interesting. Come on, I'll show you.
The expected high today around 80. The forecast, showers this morning, clearing later in the day.
So where does rain come from? Well, it comes from the water that's always in the air. That's right, there's always water in the air. Can you see it? No, trick question. You can't see it because it's in vapor or gas form, and water vapor is an invisible gas. So even though you can't see it, water is always in the air. So then the trick with making it rain is to get that water that's invisible in gas form in the air and convert it into liquid water so it can fall down to the ground. And that happens through a process called condensation. Now, you've seen condensation before. If you ever had a cold bottle of soda out on a hot day, you've probably seen the bottle start to get wet and sweaty on the outside. Well, that's condensation. See, air at a given temperature can hold a certain amount of water vapor. Warm air can hold more water vapor than cold air. So if you take your bottle of soda out on a hot day, well, that warm air can hold a lot of water vapor, but the soda bottle chills the air right around it, and then the air right around the bottle cannot hold water vapor. So that water that was invisible in gas form turns to a very visible and liquid that you can touch and you can feel. Rain works the same way, just on a huge scale, and instead of the water condensing on bottles of soda, the water condenses on little particles of dirt and salt and dust way up in the atmosphere, and in huge, huge quantities. So, to get rain, you have to get warm, moist air and cool it off, just like you're doing when you experience condensation on your soda bottle. It's kind of a tricky balancing act to get rain to happen, though. So pretend this little seesaw thing here is, well, air. At a given temperature, air can hold a certain amount of water vapor before it just can't hold any more, and the rest comes out as rain. But let's say our air picks up a lot of heat, gets warmed up. So when you add more heat to the air, you can hold a lot more water vapor. Like a lot more. Look at all that water vapor it can hold. So there we go. Now we have an air mass that has a lot of heat and a lot of water vapor in it. That means it's warm and it's moist. Now, what happens if you're, say, this air mass and you're tooling along and all of a sudden you get cooled off or all the heat gets removed? Well, it rains. All that water can no longer be contained in vapor form, so it condenses and turns into liquid water, and that's how rain forms. You take a warm, moist air mass and you cool it off, and the air can no longer contain the water vapor, so it has to condense and fall down as rain. Cool, huh?